Hello gobs and welcome back to another episode of RPG Stories. So yeah, remember. But of course, all of these are going to be horror stories, okay? I vetted most of them. Is that the word, vetted? I think I just read that off of the story in front of me now, but for the most part, these are going to be horror stories. Again, I need other stories to read, suckers, okay? I'm just kidding, I'm not... I'm just gonna keep going to the subreddit and finding it. And then I get stories when I get them. I'm in no rush. I'm in no hurry. There's tons of places to get RPG horror stories and other stories alike. But I'm just gonna keep reading horror ones until they show up. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm the Goblin King. I upload RPG content. And today I'm reading RPG stories from the RPG horror story subreddit. Which also gets non-horror stories on there. Okay. Now, these may or may not be real. That's not up to me. They're just fun stories to give advice on. So, without further ado, let's give some flipping advice. Our first story comes from Cuddles and Kinks. You better not be what I think you are. DM forgets that he's the DM. I don't know if this is interesting, but it's just so weird I had to say something. After DMing for a group of friends for a while, one of those friends offered to run a short campaign. I mostly DM, but I usually prefer playing, so I was very happy to let him run the game. Well, after almost a year of things going wrong, we finally got to a point where everyone was prepared and available. Even though I wasn't DMing, we still decided to do it at my place since I had everything set up. One by one, people arrived. The DM had some last-minute family stuff happen, so he was going to be about a half an hour late. So we all excitedly talked amongst ourselves about our plans and our characters, and how great it was to get the game back together. Then the DM shows up. The only thing he has with him is his phone, and he sits in a player's seat. So we're all giving each other confused and curious looks. I suggest that he could take the seat I usually use so that he has more space and nobody looking over his shoulder. And then he started to get the same confused look that the rest of us had. There was an awkward silence that seemed to last forever before another player snapped and bluntly said what we were all thinking. DM sorta just said, "Oh, I forgot about that. It's been so long since we first talked about this, I'm not even sure where my notes are." He didn't ask if he could just be a player for this session, as if I could have improvised a session on zero notice. I think I just let out a long sigh. One friend immediately said she was done with this crap and called an Uber home. The rest of us just turned it into a movie night. That happened a couple of months ago and we haven't talked about D&D since then, which was probably for the best. I have other games with other groups, so I'm not too bothered that this one didn't go forward, but it was just a bizarre mess. And for the record, I had spoken to the DM the weekend before all this to confirm the character concept was so okay. So I'm not sure how he managed to forget in a week since then. And that is our story. And yeah, then it's a bizarre story. I mean, it was like a year between talking about it in the first session, but I feel like if they were super interested in it, they should have just kept going with it, you know, asking questions, asking about the characters. I mean, that's a long time to prep, and obviously they weren't too into it, and they got to turn it into a movie night, so it's not all that bad. Honestly, this is such another super lighthearted story. But for the bean, next time, if you have something that's taking forever to plan, make sure you keep up with the DM and the players to make sure everyone's so interested and keeping up with times and scheduling and all that. And that's about all you can do. Besides that one chick who just says, "I'm done with this crap," and just left. Like, I guess I understand the frustration, but then again, if you weren't keeping up with the DM about it at all, then that's really on both parties. Like, the DM should have remembered, but you should also have kept, like, reminding them, like, you know, at least OP, like, hey, is my character so okay for your campaign? At least they did something about it, as far as we know, and then no one else really seemed to have anything, as far as we know. All in all, it just seemed like this was kind of just a really big scheduling issue with how long it took for everyone to get together finally. So, that's one of the largest problems of tabletop RPGs, scheduling issues. And moving on into our next story. Our next story comes from TS Epsilon 5e. Historically, the DMs I've played under at conventions are pretty okay, but this guy TLDR, Convention DM ignores safety tools, party strength, module tech, eventually butt pulls an exploding dog. No one is happy. And I think you guys can see why I decided to read this one. With a hook line like that, how could I not? Don't let me so fast a lot. All the other players are at the table when he arrives, almost exactly at the slot start time. Uncommon, but not a red flag in of itself. At each table of this con for this specific campaign, there's a safety deck. Player pulls 1+ cards containing their lines/veils, and there are anything goes cards if you have none. DM shuffles them together, then displays all the cards. This lets players set boundaries without it being obvious who doesn't want what. At a previous session, for example, players put in the animal cruelty, yelling/shouting, and child endangerment cards. The DM at this table picks up the deck, gestures with it, and says, "We don't need this, do we? Anyone have anything?" Oh, great. Now another player with a line of veil has to speak up in front of the entire table of strangers. So much for privacy. I mean, just as a side note, wouldn't you want to, stop it right there if it's that big of an issue? I mean, I don't know how convention RPGs go, okay? I seen them from afar, but I've never actually been in one, so it's like, at that point, for me, that would probably just be enough to leave if I have to say something that private in front of everybody. But let's continue on with the story. We get going and have our first combat, some giant rats. Standard fare for a party at our level, we're mostly level 2 with a single level 1. Statistically, we're considered a weak party for this particular module, but combat goes well. We're able to mop the rats up with minimum fuss and a couple of lucky crits. DM gets a look and comments that he'll need to challenge us more. Read the mirror, a crit's a crit and not super indicative of party strength, and proceed farther in the module. We're asked to investigate a thing in a swamp. Cool, great, we can do that. We ask about dangers and are told about territorial lizard folk on top of typical swamp issues. Bugs, mud, gators, etc. We prod but get nothing else. Okie dokie, let's head out. The NPC will take you halfway. You travel for about half an hour after that, the DM says. Make a con save. We roll and generally do poorly. The DM gleefully explains that the swamp bugs are viciously biting us, and everyone who failed gains a level of exhaustion, effectively a flat -2 to all rolls. Crap. We asked about the dangers though. I said there was bugs. You didn't ask about countermeasures. You have to make the save every hour. Okay. With debate turning around, but we were dropped off halfway. The hours of walking back would result in so many bug saves that statistically we'd all reach 6 levels of exhaustion and die. So we proceed, and most of us failing the second save and collecting a second level of exhaustion, we're now at a -4 to our various rolls. You'll see a clearing with a hut in the middle and surrounded by 10 slavering dogs. You think someone is trapped inside. They haven't noticed you. We start brainstorming ways to save them and escape the bugs, but with most of the party suffering from 2 levels of exhaustion, we prefer not to fight if possible. Why did I talk like that? I don't know. Let's continue. Can we lead them away with the flying party member? No, they're not interested. Can we scare them off? No, they're too hungry. Can we distract them with food? No, they wouldn't be interested in rations when there's a chance of fresh meat. Can we kill one and use that as fresh meat? No, they won't eat each other. Fighting it is. I ask if I can go up a tree and am told there are no trees. I ask if I can go to the edge of the clearing. It's a really big clearing. DM has the flyer make a save versus the dogs stink. They say it's a 15 feet radius. Flyer points up that they're 20 feet up. They're told to save anyways. We get a surprise round on them and all unload as best we can. Even when focusing firing, we barely bloody one. One of the dogs breaks through the barricaded door into the hut. The flyer says they'll reposition so they have a clear shot through the door. The door closed behind it. I'm friends with 2 of the other players at the table, and this is about where we start texting each other things like, I'm trying to survive this evening without losing my effing mind. And what happens if we, as players, just walk away from the table? And I don't think I like this DM very much. I think this DM wants to win. One of our other friends isn't at the table, but ran the module earlier. When texted about this, we get replies like, there should be only a max of 7 of the dogs, 5 base, 2 more for a strong party. That is not a strong party. and this DM is doing you impossibly dirty, and friend filled me in on the rest. I am so freaking mad for you guys. We realize that this fight is just numerically unwinnable and discuss retreating. The swamp is difficult terrain, so you'll be going half speed. The dogs aren't impeded. This is about where the table rebelled. We point out that we did indeed ask about dangers, and I found out later that an NPC is just supposed to offer the Slav with no caveats. That we couldn't go back because we die. That if we keep fighting, we'll die. And if we try to run, guess what? We'll die. This is a TPK. If that's the goal, fine, but we'd rather not drag it out if that's the case. He pouts and mutters that he'll fix it next round, and to his credit, he did. He had the dog that broke into the house stumble out and explode, scaring off the others. And then the module ended with a dead guy on a toilet and some lizard folk getting eaten by a gator. And holy moly, does this sound awful. You know me, I play with my friends alone. I don't go out and play at conventions. But if that's your thing, I feel like you should be able to leave the table with no questions asked. I don't know how convention RPGs go usually, so if you have experience with that, then let me know down in the comments what you would have done in this situation. But from an outsider's perspective, at the first couple red flags, I feel like I said, you should just be able to say, hey, I don't want to play this, and get up and walk away. Or make some other excuse like, hey, I have a phone call to go make with my mom or something. Or, you know, some way to get out of the table without needing to go too far into detail as to why. And then you just avoid a DM. Now, I don't know what the process it is to become a DM at the table, because I was reading the comments and someone's like, oh, they should be able to vet DMs who want to be DMs at conventions. And yeah, I think that would be good. I don't know. Doesn't Pathfinder have a Adventurers League? Don't they have like set official DMs for that? Again, I don't know anything about Adventurers Leagues or convention RPG. But I feel like depending on the convention or whatever, there should be some sort of process to seeing how good a DM somebody is. Or something, you know, if you're going to be a public social DM, I think there should be some type of like, what would it be? I don't know, something like LinkedIn or, you know, something for jobs that you could use except it's for DMing. So I don't know, I think we need something like that for DMs. But besides all that, clearly this DM just wanted to win. He wanted to get his TPK so he can bloat about it. Even though DMs can literally make anything happen to just kill the party. I mean, the bugs giving levels of exhaustion, that's just crazy already. There must be some really tough bugs in a really tough swamp, especially for a party of level 2s. But anyways, if you see a red flag that you just don't agree with, just leave. Better to have an awkward story than a bad story such as this one. Although this one wasn't the worst or anything, just having to deal with a crappy person, as far as we know. And with that, let's move on to our final story. Now you see, I just can't help myself. I have to continue my crusade against AI, with our final story coming from Daystar Daydreamer. Prospective player accuses me of whitewashing and then writes her character's backstory with AI. The game I'm running over Discord is set on the border between Rome and Germania, which at the time was densely forested, sparsely populated by disparate tribes, and, in this setting, home to wood elves. The party is a group of Romans sent to make contact with a wood elf tribe. According to the records from the time, Germans tended to be pale, blue-eyed, and blonde, so I had the tribe's people look like that. Meanwhile, there were no rules whatsoever on what PCs could look like because Rome was diverse AF. I stuffed everyone who requested to join into a group chat so they could bounce off of each other as they created characters, and I only had to tell them things once instead of DMing them all individually. A player asked what the tribe's people looked like, and I sent them disc. Another player, who I'll call Kitty, okay? Discord, and you want somebody to be called Kitty, DM'd me privately to tell me that Wizards of the Coast says wood elves have dark skin. That guy is white. I shrugged it off because wood elves aren't one of those races, like drow elves or tieflings, that are distinguished by their appearance. She kept pressing the matter because she was concerned about whitewashing. I told her that's not what I'm trying to do, sent a few images of POC NPCs, and went back to making stat blocks. Kitty was still typing when, several minutes later, another person submitted their character, and Eladrain, whose backstory heavily involved a tribe from the Feywild. I got really excited about incorporating that into the campaign. A few hours later, the novel Kitty had been writing so hadn't come, and I DM'd her to ask if she'd feel better if the tribe's people wore Eladrin. She just said, okay, so I made a poll in the group chats, which would last a day, asking if everyone would be okay with me changing the tribe to Eladrain for players' comfort. Kitty sent me her character that evening. I took a look and the alarm bell immediately went off into my head. Kitty writes like this, forgetting to use capitalization and spaces after commas, and most of her sentences are run-on sentences. They go on way too long, often for the better part of a paragraph, and sometimes change topic partway through, where sentences are supposed to end in a period when the topic changes. Her descriptions of the characters' personalities, relationships, and hometown were written like that, which would have been fine if it hadn't been for the backstory. Said backstory was written with accurate syntax, evocative in detail, and tailored to a fantasy genre. It had a dramatic narrative voice that felt lofty and cinematic, balancing emotional depth with plot relevance. The style leaned towards immersive storytelling. It painted a vivid picture of the character's past, often opening with a sensory moment, a pivotal memory, or a formative event. Yes, I asked ChatGPT to write that paragraph, describing its own writing story for me for the authenticity. I asked her about it and she denied. But as a recovering ChatGPT addict of 3 years, I know its writing style all too well. I don't oppose AI on principle, but if she doesn't care enough about her own character to write her backstory, she was unlikely going to care about the campaign. And besides, D&D, a game where all the fun is derived from you being creative, is one of the most self-defeating things I can think to use AI for. So I booted her from the group chat. And that is the end of our story. And it just sounds like we have a really picky player. Look, guys, lore for races and whatnot changes depending on the setting. Nothing is set in stone. For me, I wanted my lizard folk to look more like serpents. I mean, they already kind of do look like lizards, but I wanted them to be more aquatic and serpentine as opposed to the regular lizard folk. This is for Pathfinder 2e. And it worked perfectly. It's such a minute detail that it didn't change how the race is played. It just changed the lore or where they're from. Nothing is set in stone, even if it's by the Wizards of the Coast. Even if it's a 5e campaign like this one, it can change depending on the GM. Remember, the GM, the DM are the lords of the lore. It's all based on what they want for their world. And if you don't like that, then you don't have to play in that game, or you can simply select another race. That's all you have to do. Let them know about it if it's that big of a deal. And then, like I said, maybe it's not your game and you should just go and find another game that plays more into the lore of what you're looking for. Or, if it comes down to it, write your own dang campaign. DM yourself. And then you can control whatever aspect of the race that you want to do. And then, of course, I hate AI. I hate AI. If you don't know what I feel about AI, check out my gob rants on AI. And in fact, check my latest horror story when I went over your guys's, or not, maybe not you specifically, but people in my comments. I went over their horror stories, and someone also had a complaint about someone using AI to write a backstory very similar to this. I give my opinion on it. But just to make it short, I simply say, it's not that hard to write a backstory. Get with your friends, get with your group, look online, look for inspiration from media you consume. Do anything to use your brain rather than just typing it into Google or ChatGPT or any other AI assistant and or search engine. That's it. That's all you need to do. Answer some questions if you need to. Find a questionnaire to help you flesh out your backstory if it's needed. But I have said all of this previously, so go check out those videos, and that will conclude everything for today. Which story did you enjoy? What would you have done differently? Hope you guys enjoyed. If you want me to read one of your stories, then post them in the social media in the description. I read all types of stories, not only tabletop, I also read video game horror stories such as MMOs. You know, I haven't read one yet, but I will eventually. Right? And when I do, I can hopefully open the floodgate to all sorts of RPG horror stories. So whether it be horror, comedy, or glory, or anything of the sorts, I'm going to read it. So just go ahead and post it on my subreddit, or the comments, or wherever, or the social media. It's all there. And I have been the Goblin King, and if you have made it this far, thank you for watching, especially from the king himself. Remember, I post all sorts of RPG content, so if that interests you, subscribe. Now I'm going to get out of here, so you can keep watching my videos. Right? I hope you gobs have a lop of a day. May your adventures be free from horrible people.